Hello everyone, welcome to another episode. Today I'm in the woodland, my favourite places. Fantastic habitat, all the wildlife, fantastic colours, and this is a very dense forest with lots and lots of different tree species. This particular forest, and I call it a forest because it's really large, is just down the road about a mile away from me, and I bring the dogs all the time. It's very well known to me. It's got absolutely everything from a tree perspective, from the coniferous trees, deciduous, everything. It's an absolute paradise. So today's painting, and forgive the wind, whoa, ho, ho, ho. It's very windy today. A little bit different to last video. I'm going to try and capture the light through the trees today. I'm here quite early in the morning, so the sun's beautiful. Go on then. Go on then. Here we can see the sunlight shimmering and shining through those large branches and trunks of these pine trees. As I said before, it's such a mixed woodland, this, with lots and lots of different species. Really fantastic. You turn a corner and there's something different every time. And of course, my dogs love it as well. So as you can see, I've quickly drawn in and sketched the area of the trees and some other elements and branches and things. It just looks like lines at the moment, but I can tell where the trunks are and things like that. And it's just a guide, very loose and simple. It took about 5 minutes, and now we're going to start working on those first washes. So ideally, with what appears to be such a complex scene in this woodland, we want to break it down, and the way I would do that is by looking at it from the point of view of layers, and the layers would be right at the back coming forward again, and we did that in the previous video with the distance and things like that. But in this case it's a little bit more complex, but there is a way. So this is how we're going to do it. We'll start from the back, almost with the sky, and then the trees and things that are in the distance, we're going to slowly put them in and then work forward with all the trees in the foreground eventually, and they'll be the last things that we do. So my first colour I'm going to put on is a little hint of the blue sky in the background. And of course, there we go. In this particular painting, the blue sky doesn't really play a lot of prominence in this picture. It's just a part of the background, really. So this really is just going to be a wash. And to keep a check on any colour within our wash that sort of dribbles down, because again, as you can see here, I'm on the angle with my artboard. We'll just use a little bit of that toilet tissue to dab away, as we called it in previous videos, didn't we? So you can see there, we're just getting that nice gradient. I might just add a little bit more there, just to give it a bit more strength. Slowly fade it down. There we go. Okay, we'll let that dry. That's the very background layer, if you like, which is the sky right over in the distance, and we're going to build on that. So we'll let that dry now, and we'll come back to that in a few moments. Over in the distance, at the back of the forest, if you like, we've just got the first hint of the first sort of line of trees. I'm just going to indicate those with a sort of a really pale bluey green. And I'm mixing that with my French ultramarine and just a little bit of yellow. part of this layering process that I'm looking at, as we said, is an effort to sort of simplify the whole scene. So now what I'm going to do is actually put some foreground in, but treat it as a layer of colour that I can then build on later with more layers on top. And I'm using here a little bit of the sap green with my cadmium yellow and putting on a nice wash. Using quite a large brush, so I'm getting a lot on there in just a few strokes to cover the paper and get the colour on that I like. Nice and simple, really quick. Go a little bit paler. As we go further up into the tree line, further up into that sky area, what I will do is I will knock that yellowy colour back a little, make it paler, and introduce a touch more blue, just to knock the vibrancy of the yellow back a little bit. I'm going to bring some slight flecks of that colour. Okay, let's leave that there for now. Let that dry. We'll come back to that in a few minutes. As before doing the watercolours, we do the washes, and I will leave it to dry for a few moments, which is always a great opportunity to get that cup of tea. That's dried pretty well now. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to introduce you to a little technique. I only use this when I'm doing levels of detail that are within the image or your scene, whereby you don't want to be spending a lot of time with a brush dib-dabbing trying to put detail in. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the sponge. This is a real natural sponge that you can get. You can get them online. You can get them in pieces, packets of about 12 in each one sometimes. And I've had these for many years and they're still working really well. I'm going to take it into the reservoir on my palette. It's going to be quite dark. Okay, use the sponge now. Bring that colour off the palette. And we're just going to take a little bit of that onto there. Very lightly and randomly, moving the sponge around. To make random shapes. You can see that the colour that I've got on the sponge there is not very dark. It's about 50–60% of tonality, if you like. I'm just going to drop a few of these just randomly around. Okay, a little bit more just in here to add some density. Possibly just around here as well. Okay, a little bit up here. That'll do, that's nice. So we've got an effect. The effect there is some of the branches and the foliage and things that are in the background. So again, what we're going to do now is we're going to let that dry, and that shouldn't take too long. And then we're going to work into that again. We're going to be getting onto the actual trunks very shortly, and then things will start to come to life. Now I'm just going to add a second pass, if you like, or a second layer of more foliage, a deeper, darker colour, which will naturally make some of the leaves stand further forward. But I'm just going to do this very quickly, not too much. slightly ones here, just quite random. Okay, happy with that, that's good. So the technique I've just used for some of the foliage in the background, for the branches and the leaves and that fussiness that you can often see, is with the sponge. I'm now going to do a little bit similar thing with just some of the foliage in this foreground area on the ground. And I've just mixed up a nice sort of greeny yellow. I've introduced a little bit of red just to bring a little bit of warmth in. And again, this is just going to be nice and subtle, just to give the impression of that foliage. I've got a little bit of foliage kicking around. Okay, so far we've put down the wash for the sky with that blue there, and we introduced a little bit of a wash for the land and the foliage area here in the base of the foot of the forest on the ground. And then we've just used a sponge, haven't we, just randomly to add in some element of foliage. Now we're going to go back to the brush and start painting in some trees. Just using my pencil lines that I did earlier as a guide. I want to quickly just drop in some nice colour. The trees here have got sort of different widths of trunk size, which will probably give the definition of distance, because the further away they are, that's exactly what would happen. I'm just going to come back up here as I get to the edge of the paper. Just here I have a rogue branch coming in. Yeah. Lots of rogue branches in forests. The tree that stands a little bit more forward, I'll just put in a little bit of colour or tone, just to make it pop, stand forward a little bit more than the other ones. Okay. As we now start to put these tree trunks in, we can clearly see that this forest is starting to take shape. Nice and randomly paint that tree trunk in. Bringing it down. There we go. Just in this area, I just have some lighter trees that are subdued and a little bit further in the background. So I need to go back to that original bluey colour just to knock them back slightly. Okay, happy with that. I think that's most of the medium to background trees in there. I'm going to leave that to dry. We're going to come back to that shortly once it's dried off really nice, and we're going to put the foreground trees in, much more prominent, with more colour. As things are starting to look a little bit more complex now, I can actually see through the trees, if you like, and know where my foreground trees are going to be. So to help me, just before I put those trees in, I'm going to just redraw what I did originally, just to give me a guide. There is a little bit of dampness still left on the Fabriano paper here because the pencil graphite isn't going down as easily as when we first started. But not to worry, we're still getting a nice guide. I'm going to use a larger brush now to bring these two trees in. But we need quite a bit of colour. Using the edge of the much larger brush, the brush that I normally use for washes, but the edge of that brush has given me a nice line to take down, and it's a nice random line as well. It's not too clean, and then all I'll do is I'll just flood my tree trunk with the colour that's still on the brush. There we go. I'll just leave him to sit there and soak in while we do the next tree. This one actually is a little bit larger. There we go. Same again. The other side. Again, I'm just going to leave that to dry and we'll come back to that in a moment. What I'm going to do now, guys, is just bring in a little bit of depth into just some of the trees just to make them pop forward, and then I'll finalise the tree area as far as the trunks are concerned, with finishing off on the main two as well at the front, just to bring them forward with a little bit more pop. And I'm just going to use a little bit more green now into this to add a little bit of strength. So a couple of trees I'm going to bring forward, which will be this one. So as you can see, as soon as we do something like that and introduce another wash or another layer of colour on top, quite wash it on just simply, those trees pop forward and we get the illusion of the foreshortening of the other trees in the background. Nothing too complex, nothing too detailed, straight in there. This guy here. Okay, happy with that. We'll let them to dry now. We'll just leave them, and then we'll once they've dried and nice and fresh, I can then discern what the strength of those actually are. And what I'll then do is I'm just going to work back into the front trees. And I'm going to be happy with that background. Well, background, I say background, it's the trees, isn't it? But we've created a background and the illusion of depth. And what I'm then going to do is going to quickly work on the foreground. And we had a light source over here in the centre, and that's sort of giving a sense of perspective to the shadow. So they're going to fan out in such a way to the centre like that. And we're going to create that in the foreground. I'm now going to put the detail and the definition into these front trunks here, right at the centre and the foreground of the painting. So here we go. Almost using the side of the brush just to give that little bit of a scrapey feel, and hopefully that will help us put a bit of definition of bark that these trees have. These would be the only trees in the whole of the painting on the trunk area that I will put any sort of brushwork to indicate that detail in, because they are so at the forefront of the picture. The rest of the trees that we've done earlier we'll just leave as almost like strokes. So we can see now those trees have really popped forward with that extra layer. We'll let that dry off, and then we'll just put a little bit of detail, just some indication of branches and things like that, just to give it a bit more life, and add just a little bit of foliage, then that'll be done. And then we're going to work on this foreground area just here. One of the most important decisions we would make as an artist when we sort of commence a painting or stand anywhere to take a picture to do a painting is exactly where we position ourselves, which is our viewpoint, and that's going to have a profound effect on our painting as we progress. In this particular painting, I found an area in the forest where the sun was sort of just peeping through, and that gave me a really nice shadow effect, which is what I'm going to put into these trees now, right down in this foreground here. So firstly, I'm just going to add in a little bit of more green in here as we come down here, side of the brush. Just give that effect there. You can see the effect there that it's giving of sort of foliage. Okay, leave it there. Just in here, got some beautiful sunlight. The brightness and the vibrancy of the cadmium yellow there is going to help us indicate just where we've got beautiful sunlight hitting foliage. Loading the brush up with colour, and then just using the side of the brush just to fleck on little bits of vibrancy. Sunlight peeping through those trees, hitting bits of foliage. And then I just want some of that vibrancy of that yellow coming down, creeping down just into the foreground now, to brighten it up as it pops through. This little technique of just scraping on a little bit of colour with the side of the brush is also helped by this fabulous Fabriano paper. Just a few little bits here. That'll do nicely. What I'm going to do finally now is put the impression of those shadows in, where that sunlight is beating through all those trees and the trunks and all the branches.
There we go. Really happy with that, guys. I've actually enjoyed that one. I hope you have too. Again, let's look at the process, what we did. We started with the blue wash of the background. We came down into here and we added a little bit of warmth, didn't we? And then we put some foliage warmth in right at the back there. Then we went into it and we started bringing in the distant trees in the background with a lighter colour. And then we worked that up, didn't we, to the ones in the more prominent in this area. And then we put the foliage in at the front. We've used a different technique today slightly, haven't we? We've used the sponge, which is lightly dashed around, which to indicate a little bit of foliage, and that's a quick way of doing that kind of thing, so we're not sat there for a long time dotting foliage and leaves and things like that in, because once we get to that stage you could almost say we're turning it into an illustration, whereas this has been about 45 minutes of a watercolour, which is a nice sort of field sketch. Later on down the line in other videos I will go into things like this in probably more detail and do things in a slightly different way, more definition and things like that, and we'll have techniques to do that as well. Well, there we go. We've come to the end of today's episode. The woodland and trees. I hope you got some value from what we've done today, the way that we broke down this watercolour painting, and looking at the process overall, how we started from the very back in the background, and we layered through and made sense of what appears to be sometimes a very daunting subject matter. It can be really tough to discern, you know, all that's going on in a forest with the tree trunks and the leaf, the foliage, all the light, how it plays on the branches and things like that. But there is a way through, and hopefully today you found some solace, and maybe, you know, when you come to doing something like that, the value that you've got from today's video is going to help you. So until next time, I bid you farewell from the forest. I really hope that you're enjoying your creative journey, whatever it is that you're doing. Okay, bye bye for now.